What's up guys, it's Itzel, welcome to my channel. Today we are talking about my February TBR, and this is actually my first TBR video of the year for 2025 because I didn't film one in January. To be honest, I haven't really been reading much. I only finished one book in December. I didn't finish any books in January, and now I magically think that I'm gonna finish some books this month. I started 2 books in January. I didn't finish either of them, but I am planning on finishing them this month. It's been like a combination of being in a bit of a reading slump, but also just prioritizing other hobbies, but I'm really wanting to get back into reading, and part of that is going to be doing some stuff with my reading journal, but that'll kind of be part of another video, either a vlog or its own separate thing. In the past, I've picked my TBR with you guys and done like the TBR jar and other things like that, but today we are not doing that. I actually already picked out my TBR and I'm just going to be walking you through all of the books. The reason I did that this time around is because I guess later in February I plan on doing kind of like a full inventory of all my books and calling myself out on every single book I have on my physical TBR, and I think the plan is to clear off a shelf or two and actually put all of my physical TBR on there, because right now what I've read and haven't read are all scattered amongst the shelves. So I want to, I think, separate them so I actually know what I have to read, and hopefully just being able to see that will, 1, motivate me not to buy any more books, and then 2, motivate me to actually read them. So that's kind of the plan for later on in the month. Once I actually have specific shelves that are dedicated to my TBR, I think it'll be more fun to actually pick my TBR with you guys. That way you guys can see the books that I'm clearly picking from instead of just from the entire collection on the bookshelves. So hopefully that will happen again later this month, and then we'll start picking my TBRs together again in March. I also, like I had said earlier, was in a bit of a slump, so I figured I just need to pick some books that are calling my name right now. That way I can actually start reading, and then hopefully it'll snowball to me continuing on for the next few months. I have 6 books picked out, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read them off to you and tell you a little bit about what they're about. So yeah, I will start with the 2 books that I started in January that I'm going to be continuing over in February. And the first one is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. I believe this was in my December TBR or some other previous TBR. I didn't get to it, but I did start it in January, and I don't know, I'm on page 144 of 359, so a little bit under halfway, but I mean, so far it's very interesting. I think it's just, I need something a little bit more fun and easy to read, not a lot of thought necessary, if that makes sense. So I think this one I'm going to put on a slight pause. I'm going to kind of pick something up that's just super fast paced and then probably get back to this, or just read them at the same time. I tend to do that as well. In this book, the main character Esme's father is working towards completing the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, and she's exposed to this environment since she is very little, just a young child, and she begins to collect other words, so like reject words or words that she's heard, but the only words they use are words that have been written down and used in actual literature. So she starts to collect these other words, and I guess eventually she creates a dictionary of the lost words. It says this book is actually inspired by actual events. I'll read one line here so you can kind of get a touch for what it's about, but it says, set in the early 20th century during the height of the women's suffrage movement, the Dictionary of Lost Words reveals a missing narrative, hidden between the lines of a history written by men. So a lot of these words are going to come from women, and I think she's going to end up going on an adventure once she's older to kind of discover these lost words and not really give meaning to them, but annotate them and kind of carry them forward into the future. But this is one of the books that I'm going to be finishing this month. The other one that I started, which I believe is also possibly a part of that December TBR, was Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies in November, I think, and I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 4.5. So I am really excited to get into this one. I've barely started this one. I'm on page 24. So yeah, very early into it. I believe the third book is coming out in February this month, so I really need to get to reading this one, that way I can pick up the third one, which I probably won't read until March, but I guess we'll see. I'm really excited to read this one, so I don't really know why it's been taking me so long to get into it. Part of being in a reading slump, I guess. But this one is basically about Emily Wilde, who's a scholar of fairy folklore, and she just finished writing her encyclopedia in that first book. And so in this book, she has a new project to focus on, a map of the realms of fairy. So she's kind of completing her, or conducting her research, so she has to travel and she ends up going on all these adventures. And I don't know what any of the adventures entail in this book because I haven't read it yet, but she does have 2 travel companions, one of her colleagues who's Bamblebee, and then her dog, which I forget the dog's name. This is the second book in the series, so if you want to know a little bit more about it, then you should probably read the first one first. The next book is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I've been wanting to read this book for a long time, several years, but lately it's kind of come to the forefront of my mind, and I've really been wanting to read it, so I finally picked it up. The only reason I hadn't actually bought it sooner is because I wanted to get a different, more exciting cover, I guess, and I could just never find one, so I finally decided, like, the other covers I've seen for it I like even less than this one, and this one's kind of iconic, I suppose, so I just, whatever, the cover's not that important, this is the normal cover. This is a dystopian novel where environmental disasters and declining birth rates have led to a second American Civil War, a totalitarian regime that enforces rigid social roles and enslaves the few remaining fertile women. So my understanding is that all of the women, basically their purpose is to just give birth. I really don't know much about it beyond that, but I am really excited and just interested to read this novel. I've heard amazing things about it. It's kind of a modern day classic, so yeah, I don't really have much to say. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about it, but I can't wait to actually read it. I was sitting really awkwardly, so now I've moved and I don't know how much the camera has shifted, but, or maybe it hasn't at all, you wouldn't have noticed, but anywho, the next 2 books are actually part of an interconnected standalone series, and these are my 2 romance picks for the month of February. The first one is Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and this is part of the Rose Hill series. I haven't read anything by Elsie Silver before, but I've heard a lot of good things. I believe there's a difference. This is her newest series, her ongoing series, but I believe one of her previous series is like a really good series, I guess. I don't really know. This is a genre I'm not really used to, so if I like this, I may go back and read those, or even if I didn't love this that much, I may still try and read those other ones, since supposedly those are better. I know that the series all consist of small town romances. The interesting thing about this one is it seems like this isn't just a city girl going into a small town to meet a small town guy. It sounds like they were both in the city. They may have both been from the small town. I don't know yet. Just from kind of glancing at the back here, it seems like both the female and male main characters are moving back to the small town after living in the city, and there's a young girl who claims that the male main character is her biological father, so I'm sure she'll play into this somehow. This is kind of my romance pick for the month, and to be quite frank, it's mostly because I've had this book. I don't even really know when or why I bought it. Not that I don't have high expectations for it, it's just not my usual type of pick, but I've had it, and we're in February, I feel like I need a good romance, and I only had this one that's just like a no thoughts, just vibes kind of romance, if that makes sense. So I felt like that's kind of what I needed to maybe get out of a slump, because I can probably read this really fast. I mean, the words on the page are ginormous, so I'm pretty sure I can get through this decently quickly, and maybe that'll kind of help me get out of this slump that I'm in. So yeah, hopefully I do like this. I have one thing to say, and it's that I heard there's supposed to be mountains here for like each book in the series, which would be really satisfying, but mine doesn't have that. If you guys have this book, does yours have the mountains on it? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I guess I'll just show you, because my second book is the second book in the series, and we'll get to that in a second, but as you can see, the spines are completely different, and I'm really not sure how that happened, because I've seen some where the first book also had the mountains, so did I just get a weird copy, or does yours also not have the mountains? Anywho, let me know. But yes, I recently picked up the second book because honestly the same thing. I kind of figured I want something quick, and I've heard this one was even better than the first one. So Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver, again part of the Rose Hill series. And yeah, I don't know why. I had a gift card to the bookstore, and for some reason I was like, well, I've got a few options. I knew I wanted to buy romance because I knew that I wanted to read that in February, and partially because it's Valentine's Day, but also partially because I know that these books I can go through really fast and get me out of slump, like I've said already. So yeah, same thing. This one is a small town romance. I guess Rose Hill must be the town, so they probably all take place here. It seems like this is another single dad kind of moment. I guess the first one, the guy didn't know he was a single dad until, I guess, at some point within the story, but here this one sounds like the main male character knew that he was a father. A shameless flirt. I'm not really sure what the plot is for it, but small town romance is really all you need to know, I guess. And this is really random, but I don't know if you see these dirty kind of stains on it. That's part of the book, which is really weird, right? Is that... Oh, I guess the first one had it too. I mean, I'm sure that's the vibe. It's, again, small town, a rugged mountain town, so it makes sense, but I thought it was just dirty at the bookstore, and then I realized that the other one they had behind it had the exact same stains on them. So this is my second romance pick and my fifth book pick. And lastly, I have The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. Funnily enough, I've heard a lot about this book, but also not what it's about. I mean, I can assume. It says, based on the powerful true story of love and survival. I've heard about this book, but never really any details, and I don't really want to read the description because this is the kind of book where I just want to read and find out what happens. I don't really have much to say about it because of that. I just know it takes place, if not during the Holocaust, then immediately following the Holocaust. I'm interested to give this a read. I'm sure parts will be very heartbreaking. Don't really have much else to say about it, so hopefully I'll do a wrap up at the end of the month and you guys can hear my thoughts about it then. So these are the 6 books on my February TBR. It seems like a bit of a random selection, but because I know my reading taste, it just makes sense. I kind of read a wide variety of genres. So we've got historical fiction, romance, fantasy, dystopian, that kind of stuff. So yep, this kind of sums me up, I guess. I'm really looking forward to having a good reading month and just reading in general. Like I said, I haven't been reading lately, so hopefully some of these books can really pull me out of that slump. Like I said earlier, I am planning on kind of doing an entire bookshelf revamp slash first episode of my TBR takedown challenge or something like that. So you can look forward to that video coming out later this month once I actually kind of sit down with my shelves and go through each book. And like I said, in the future I plan on actually having TBR shelves because I don't have a TBR cart and I don't want to get one. So I just want to have a dedicated space on the shelf, and I know I have a lot of books on my physical TBR. I don't know how many right now, which is why I want to kind of film that video and just take inventory of all the stuff I have. But you can definitely look forward to that video and honestly the whole series that'll come from that on actually trying to read all the books on my physical TBR. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if there are any books that you're really excited to read this month, or if you have any tips on getting out of a slump, because I've kind of been in minor slumps before, but this is, I've only read one book. I've only finished one book in the past 2 months, so I'm deep in a slump. So if you have any tips or tricks, then definitely please let me know. And if there are any books you recommend to get out of a slump, also let me know. If these books get me out of my slump, then I will let you know. And honestly, maybe it'd be a great idea to kind of write a list of books that can get people out of a slump. I'm sure that'll be helpful to some people. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great reading month and Valentine's Day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!